Good morning. So we are on Ches Amud Aleph 28a. The Gemara is going to now discuss how we derive that the punishment or the effect of the Sotah water affects both the woman drinking it as well as the paramour, the one with which she's being suspected. The Gemara is going to identify 3 different verses that describe the water going into her. And these 3 words, these 3 verses, serve as the foundation for this study. There's going to be 2 different ways of understanding it, as we shall see. So let's look at the verses. It's the second half of chapter 5 of Book of Numbers, Bamidbar. We went through these verses a number of times, but let's just do a quick overview so that we know what's going on and understand what's happening, because the Gemara is going to divide it into 3 subtleties. Okay, so the verse opens in chapter 11, right? God speaks to Moshe to tell the Jewish people. And then it goes on to tell the children of Israel that if a woman's wife goes away and she lays with another man and so on, and she is secluded and we suspect her of adultery, we don't know what's going on, there's no witness, right? Verse 13. Then verse 14, and he feels jealous, he warns her. Chapter 15, verse 15, I'm sorry. The man brings his wife to the temple, to the kohen, and they bring the offering. Chapter 17, verse 16, the actual offering. Now chapter 17 begins the process of the water. So chapter 17 describes the making of the water, the earthenware vessel with the earth in it and the water. Verse 18. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 number, sorry. Verse, okay, I keep calling the verses chapters, my apologies. So verse 18, then they uncover her hair, and the offering is in her hand. Chapter 19, what's in chapter? Verse 19, verse 20, and verse 21, and verse till the end essentially describe, well, let's break it down. Verse 19, 20, and 21 describe the speech the kohen gives to the woman, right? The kohen shall then place her under oath and say to the woman, right? If anyone we did. Verse 19, right? And if you drank, and so if you committed adultery, and you will drink, and it'll become a bitter cursed water for you. Verse 20. But as for you, if you've gone astray, and you've taken a man not your husband, and then 21 continues, the kohen continues to administer the oath. And the kohen says, may God grant you this curse and this oath amongst your people, and Hashem will cause your thigh to rupture and your belly to swell. Now here comes the first time the verse says the word we're looking for, the opening word of chapter 22. All right, this is the first one. Yes. Ubo hamayim hama'arim. Sorry? Yeah. Verse 22. Ubo hamayim hama'arim. And the cursed water shall enter in your stomach, to make the belly swell and your thigh rupture. And the woman responds, Amen, Amen. Part of the speech the kohen gives. Okay. Then verse 23 describes what the kohen does. The kohen writes these curses onto a parchment, erases it in the bitter waters. verse 23, then verse 24, and the kohen shall give the bitter waters to the woman to drink. And then again, ubo, second time in verse 24, this word ubo, and the water shall enter into her. And then 25, the kohen takes the offering, offers the offering, and afterwards he gives it a drink. And then verse 27. And and it will be when she drinks the water, and if she was defiled, and the water, bitter waters enter her and cause her stomach to swell and her thigh to rupture. So 3 times the verse uses this word ubo, and the waters shall enter. In verse 22, that is during the speech the kohen gives. The kohen says, and the water shall enter you and cause a curse. That's verse 22. Then verse 24 describes the kohen actually giving her the water to drink, ubo, and the water shall enter her. Again, that same word ubo, but this time not during the kohen's speech, but when the kohen is actually giving her the water to drink. Verse 24. Then verse 27 in describing what happened. And the water enters her and it curses her. So during the kohen's speech, telling her what's going to happen, the water is going to enter you. When he actually does it, the water enters. And number 3, describing the actual punishment that happens to her. And in each of these cases, the Torah says, ubo, and the water shall enter. Yeah, clear? Let's keep that in our mind as we go to the Gemara. Yeah? Clear? Kohen's speech, when the kohen actually does it, and when the effect takes place. Those are the 3 times the Torah uses this word, uba'u, and they shall enter, meaning the water shall enter. So these are the words that the Gemara, that the Mishnah told us, is how we derive that the effect is on both the woman drinking the water as well as the paramour. As we see here at the Gemara, 28a. The line begins with the word boil, and then there's 2 dots, and then the Gemara quotes the Mishnah. Shenemar ubo ubo. How do we know, said the Mishnah, that the effect of the water is both for the one drinking as well as the paramour? But the verse says ubo ubo. The Mishnah does not explain how those 2 words ubo ubo, or this one word ubo, which means and they shall enter, the water shall enter her. The Gemara doesn't explain, or the Mishnah doesn't explain how that led us to conclude that the water affects her and the paramour. So we already ubo shenemar ubo, the Mishnah, the Gemara quotes the Mishnah, and then it says ibarlahu. You have it. Sorry. Yeah, so the Mishnah didn't explain how this word led us to conclude that the water affects both her and the paramour. When we looked at the Mishnah, I already incorporated the Gemara's conclusion, or at least one of the versions, which is because of the double expression, because it says twice ubo. But we looked at the verse now, and we just found out that it's actually 3 times where the verse said ubo. Once during his speech, and the water shall enter you. Once when he actually administers it, and the water shall enter. And then describing the effects of the Sotah, of the water, that it causes her belly to swell and thigh to rupture. There too it says, and the water shall enter. So the Gemara now gets into the details of how we read these verses and how it leads us to conclude that the effect is both for her and the paramour. So boilu, the following inquiry was raised before them. Again, we have this word boi, which means the questioner doesn't have an agenda. The questioner just wants to know. Because it's in the singular, iboi, he asked, lahu, to them in the plural, so we can assume that there's one sage who stands up in the study house and presents the following question, and then it's discussed by all the scholars and sages in the room. So iboi lahu, he presented the following inquiry to them. Uba'u ka'amar. Does the Mishnah mean that the way to derive that the water affects both her and the paramour is by the fact that the Torah adds the letter vav to the word bo? It could have said bo'u mayim ha'marim, the cursed waters enter. It didn't have to say, and the cursed waters entered. So is that what's being derived here? From the fact that there's a vav and, telling us that it's beyond the effect it has on her, it also has an effect on someone else. And that's alluded to in the extra letter vav, which is that prefix that translates the word in English and. Oi, or perhaps what the Mishnah means is ubo ka'amar. Perhaps the Mishnah means not the fact that there's a vav added to the word ubo, but the very fact that it's written twice. There's the question. Is it the extra vav, the extra word and, or is it the very fact that the word itself appears more than once? Here's the Gemara's question. Here's this person's question as he presents it to the study hall. So the response comes back.
I guess there's more than one entity. Both not be attributed to that. Right?
Well, we're going to see. Well, the direct meaning is we're talking about her because she's drinking. Yeah. So yeah, let's make this clear. So the verse is talking about her. So the plain meaning, we're talking about her, right? But then if there are added words or letters that aren't necessary for the very narrative about her, then we extrapolate from there in the exegesis form that it belongs to him too, right? So the Gemara is asking, is the extra word that we're using to derive that there's more happening than this her, is that from the very fact that it says ubo with an and, with a vav, or from the fact that it says more than once bo? Right. Which means we're going to have to come to the conclusion that it says 3 times ubo. What are this necessary for? What are the 3 necessary for? And if we're concerned with the word vav, the word and, then we have 6. Because the verse says 3 times vo, and then at each time it says with a vav, ubo and. So if the letter vav, 6. It says 3 times bo. No, it says 3 times the word bo, 3 times it enters her, right? Once when he's giving her the curse, and it will enter you. Once when he actually administers it, and it will enter her. And once when it describes the actual effects, and it enters her. So it says 3 times enters, and at each of the time it says and. That would be a total of 6. If you're not concerned with the letter vav, with the extra letter, you only have 3. That's what the Gemara is going to discuss soon. Is it 6? Is it 3? And what do these things apply to? So let's see. If the Gemara asks, first of all, do we care about the vav or not? That's the Gemara's question now. The Boilu, they asked, are we concerned with the vav and the extra letter vav, the extra word and, is what gives us this derivation? And therefore, ubo amar, when the Mishnah says that we derive from the word ubo, that the effect is both on him and on her, is that because there's a vav there? Ubo, it could have said bo, could have said it enters. But the verse chose to say, and it enters, to give us an extra inclusive measure. Or we don't care about the extra letter vav, and the Mishnah's extrapolation is from the fact that it says more than once ubo, but the letter vav, the and, is not relevant. So there's a question: is it from the extra letter vav and, or is it from the repetition of the word itself? But the letter vav is of no concern. So says the Gemara. Tashma, come and listen. Let's look at the very text of the Mishnah itself. The very next teaching of the Mishnah. Right? We had 2 teachings in the Mishnah regarding the Sotah. The first was that the effect is both on him and her on the paramour. That's one. And the next teaching you had about the Sotah is that in the same way she is forbidden to her husband, she is also forbidden to the paramour. That was the other teaching. Right? So let's look at the other teaching and see if we can glean from there whether or not the Mishnah cares for the letter vav. So says the Gemara. The Mishnah said, "Kishem shasur labal," just as after the Sotah proceeding begins before she drinks the Sotah water, she's forbidden to be with her husband. Kach so too, asur laboyo, she's forbidden to be with the paramour. Should there be a divorce, or if he dies, he cannot marry the paramour. She cannot marry the paramour. Shenemar, as the verse reads, "Nitma'a v'nitma'a." She is defiled, and she is defiled. So the double expression of defilement means there's 2 defilements. She defiled to her husband, and she defiled to the paramour. So the Gemara asks, well, you didn't resolve the issue. You just extended the question. By dying to buy, we're still stuck with the same inquiry. Nitma'a ka'amar. Does the Mishnah mean because the verse says more than once and she's defiled, that's why we get deriving that she's both defiled to her husband and defiled to the paramour? Or nitma'a v'nitma'a ka'amar. Or is the Gemara here too concerned with the letter Vav? In describing the Sotah narrative, the verse says more than once she's defiled. So is the Gemara there saying too, because of the double expression, it says more than once defiled, therefore we're knowing that she's defiled to two different people? Or is there too, because the verse says the word and, Vav? So you haven't answered the question, you've only expanded it. Following?
Well, I just wanted to ask, how does it make a difference whether you include the paramour either from Vav or you include it from the word?
So again, okay, so if you do from the word itself, you only have 3 times the verse says ubo, if you're not concerned with the letter Vav. If you are concerned with the letter Vav, you have 6. Each time the verse says bo, and then each time the verse adds a Vav to the ubo, you have 6 derivations you need to satisfy. If you are, you have to be consistent. You have to be consistent. So if we are concerned, if when the Torah adds the letter Vav, it's there for you to extrapolate a law, then you have to go through the Torah, and every single time the verse says the word and it shouldn't say the word and, you have to find an extrapolation. In any verse, you got to be consistent. If the Torah adds the word Vav and that letter Vav, the word and, is to teach you exegesis extrapolation, then you have to be consistent. You always got to do that. Now, forget the rest of the Torah. Certainly, you got to be consistent within the law of the Sotah. Now, within the law of the Sotah, the Torah says 3 times, bo. And each of those 3 times, it says with an and. So the 3 words you bo themselves must teach you something, plus the 3 times it says and, giving you 6. If you are of the view that the letter Vav is inconsequential, and it's in the double expression that you're deriving that the paramour gets punished, then you only have 3 to satisfy. Enough for what? But then why do you have 6? And what's the 3rd one for? You have to explain them all. It's not just about getting the paramour included. You have to explain the verses too, right? So good, either one is good enough to get the paramour, good, but what do you do with the rest of the explanation, with the rest of the verses? What are you doing with the rest of the extrapolative exegesis? Following or no? No, I have this clear because I'm going to build a building on top of this, and we're not clear. It's going to collapse. No. Let's explain it again. Because otherwise, we're going to get stuck. We're going to keep coming back to this, and we're not going to understand. There's a fundamental structure here, which is we need to understand the verses. Forget the Mishnah for a second. We need to understand the verses. Right? Now are you of the opinion that the letter Vav is something to be extrapolated from or not? So yes or no, right? If you're of the view that the letter Vav is significant, and if the Torah adds letter Vav, it's for you to derive something, then the words ubo, which appear 3 times in the narrative of the Sotah, must teach you 6 things. And can you justify 6 things?
You can't separate them out. You can't separate it. It's not one or the other. You have to substantiate both.
Well, it depends what your view is. If your view is that the Vav is significant and must teach you something, then each of the 3 times the verse says the word Vav, you have to explain why it's there. And then you have to explain what the word ubo is doing, right? Which means you have to have 6 extrapolations, 3 for the meaning of the word bo itself, and then 3 for each of the Vavs that are added to those 3 bows, right? Good, right?
Yeah.
If you're of the view that the letter Vav is of no consequence, then all you have is 3 times the verse says the word ubo, and you have to satisfy those 3 verses, why they're there. That's it. So now the question is, which one is our Mishnah in? Which camp is our Mishnah in? Our Mishnah said that bo teaches us that the effect happens to the paramour too. Is that because of the Vav, in which case we need to justify 6 verses, or is that because of the double expression of bo, the more than once that it says bo, in which case all we have to satisfy is 3. Yeah? Okay. So the Gemara therefore says, well, let's look at the next statement. When the verse derives that he's both forbidden to be with her, with her husband, and she's forbidden to be with her paramour, there too the Gemara cites to a double expression, nitma v'nitma. So again there, she's defiled, and then over there too the verse adds an and she's defiled. Right? So there too we need to understand. Is it the double expression? Because it says twice nitma, and each defilement refers to something else, or is it the word vav, the and? Clear? So we just expanded the question. We didn't answer the question. It says the Gemara like this: Tashma, come and listen. Midikatani Seifa. Look at the next clause in the Mishnah. The Mishnah introduces a dispute. Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi. The initial statement was Rabbi Akiva. But Rabbi says, Shnei pa'amim ha'amurim b'parsha. I, says Rabbi, derive this teaching that she is forbidden to be with her husband, and she's also forbidden to her paramour. This I derive from the fact that it says twice. He says explicitly, Shnei pa'amim ha'amurim b'parsha. The twice that it says in the narrative of Scripture, v'nitma v'nitma. It says twice, and she is defiled. Echad. One of the two times, Labal, to tell us she's defiled to her husband and she can no longer be with him. The Echad, and one, Laboyo, that she's forbidden to be with her paramour. So Rebbe comes to Rabbi Akiva and says, I don't derive the law the way you do. I derive it from the fact that the Torah repeats the word. So what does it tell us about Rabbi Akiva? Rebbe's arguing with Rabbi Akiva, not in law, but in derivation.
I think he's saying that it's the word.
Rebbe is saying, unlike you, I derive it from the very fact that the word is repeated. That's a Rebbe's opinion. That's explicitly stated in the Mishnah, implying that what's Rabbi Akiva's view? That it's the vav. It's not the double expression. Because Rebbe comes and argues with Rabbi Akiva and says, you, Rabbi Akiva, unlike you, I look at the fact that it's repeated, which by inference, michlal, from here we can derive the Rabbi Akiva, vav kadarish.
You can't tell by the face of it that Rabbi Akiva is relying on vav.
Well, we now know it from Rebbe's argument. That's right. From Rebbe's argument, we know what Rabbi Akiva holds. If Rebbe is saying, unlike you, I derive it from the fact that the Torah repeats the words, means you, Rabbi Akiva, are not concerned with the repetition. You're deriving it from the vav. So you, Rabbi Akiva, have 6 verses to satisfy, or 6 derivations to satisfy. The fact that it says 3 times of bone, it goes, it enters. And then each time where it says the water enters, it says the word and. And you, Rabbi Akiva, are concerned with the extra vav with the word and. Following? Therefore, Rabbi Akiva's view, Shisa Kroi Ksivi. He has 6 verses to satisfy. It's 3 verses or 3 words, but each of those 3 words have an extra vav, an extra and, giving us 6. In English, it's actually 6 because you have the letter vav becomes a word. And enter, and enter, and enter 3 times. Each one with the word and. Whereas Rabbi only has 3 because he doesn't care for the word and. To him, the word and is inconsequential.
But each of them do not give reasons for and against their point of view, right?
No.
They just conclude.
Different ways of exegesis.
I don't include the vav, and you do.
That's right.
They don't justify the reason for
Not here, no. Okay, so before we go to the next line, now that we understand this, let's go back to the text of the verses. Back to the scripture. So let's look at the 3 times the word bo comes. Look at the Chumash. So verse 24. What are the 3 times where it has that word bo and enters? Meaning and the water enters. But and enters is the word we're looking for. Ubo. The first is in verse 24. Wait, no, back up, sorry. The first is verse 22 during the Kohen's speech. And will enter. It's and, right? Yeah, because that's
this gate of water will enter in.
Right. So this is during the speech. That's 1. During the Kohen's speech when he warns her what's going to happen. Then verse 24, right? What does that describe? Verse 24. Yeah. That describes it actually going into her. right? And he shall give the bitter, verse 24. So first, that's correct. So verse 24 is him warning her, this is what's about to happen to you, right? That's verse 22. Verse 24 is actually happening to her, right? He shall give her the bitter waters and shall enter her, 24. And then the third time is in verse 20. The third time is in verse 27, where there it actually goes into her. He shall make her drink the water, and it shall be that if she had been defiled and so on, the curse bearing water shall enter her. So one describes his curse, one describes her actual drinking of the water, and one describes the effect the water has on her. Yeah, you want to press the number 6, please. Yeah, I think he brought it here because no one's in the office. All right, so now let's look at the Gemara. The Gemara is like this, as Rashi explains it for us. There is one time, let's do 3 and then we'll see the 6 in a moment. The 3 times the Torah says and shall enter, one is to empower the water. One is to empower the water. The water should be empowered to have its effect. Number 1. So that would be which place betin. That would be which one? Verse 22. During the curse, when he curses her, that one is to inform us the order of how it's going to happen to her. That first is going to cause the stomach to rupture and then the thigh, to inform us. That's number 1. Right? Remember, we discussed earlier that the Torah tells us exactly how the effect is going to happen, so that people shouldn't think it's not the right way or something like that, right? There shouldn't be a misunderstanding of what's going to happen to her. That's verse 22, right? Right? That's a description of what's going to happen, so that we know this is the order. That's number 1. Then, verse 27, the third one, where there it describes what's going to happen to her, right? Verse 27, where it describes what's going to happen to her, that the water is going to enter and she get a curse. It describes the actual effect. That is God empowering the water to make it work. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, just press 6. Right. So when you got it, just press 6. Good. It's done. If it says on top, open door, it's good in the bar there. So number 1 is to inform us the order. That's when he's informing her. Number 3, the verse in verse 27, which says the effect it has on her, that's God empowering the water to. When you press 6, tell it to push and pull the door. Not working. Does it say in the bar up there, opening door when you press 6? It does? Okay. Anyway, okay, so again, when it says that he is giving her the speech, that's to inform us the order. Yeah. When it describes the effect, verse 27, yeah, that's to empower the water that should actually do the effect. And then verse 24 is the commandment: give her to drink the water. Right? So there's informing us the order, there's empowering the water that it should have its effect, and then there is the commandment that we should do it. There are the 3 times, right? where the commandment to do it is actually a way of letting us know that God's promising that it's going to work. Meaning to us. So one to inform us the order, one to empower the water, and one to command us / let us know this is going to take place. Those are the 3 times. Now, each of these 3 say with an and. Right? So 3 for the effect on her, and 3 for the effect on him in these 3 different categories. Following? Right, so we have these 3 things: empowering the water, telling us the order, and commanding us that this is going to happen to you. Right? So if it's those 3 elements, those 3 elements have to be true for her and for him. And thus, Rabbi Akiva would say the word "and" in all these 3 is tell us that all these 3 elements apply to her and to him. Clear? All 3 of them have an "and." All 3 of them have the word "avo," have an "and." Notwithstanding the translation there. But all 3 have the word "and." Yeah? Clear? So let's see it inside.
Hello? All right. Yeah.
Push and pull the door.
Just push and pull the door. It open. Not opening?
Press it again. Let go, press it again.
Okay.
Pick up first, okay. So now let's see the inside. Michal, Rabbi Akiva, Vav Kadarish. So Rabbi Akiva derives the word "and." Hilchach, therefore, Rabbi Akiva for Rabbi Akiva, Shisa Kroi Ksivi. There's 6 verses to be derived here. Chad l'tzavah dida, 1 to empower the water to curse her, v'chad l'tzavah didei, and 1 to empower the water to curse him. Chad la'asiyah didei, 1 to describe the effect it's going to have on her, v'chad la'asiyah dida, and 1 to describe the effect it's going to have on him. Actually, the reverse, first him, then her. Chad li'adiyah dida, 1 to inform us the order of the events on her, on him, v'chad li'adiyah didei, and 1 to inform us the order of events on her. So all these 3 elements got to be doubled, 1 for her, 1 for him. That's why the word "vav" is there, to empower the water, to inform us the order, and to let us know this is going to be happening.
Okay, so 3 verses times 2 people equals 6.
Exactly, 3 verses, 3 elements of the water for 2 people. So it's times 2, 6. That's it. That's Rabbi Akiva's understanding. That's all beautiful. Okay, so we'll stop over here. But tomorrow we have to get to is like this. Rabbi Yehuda is of the view that there is no vav, or the vav is inconsequential. So he only has 3. Rabbi, he only has 3, right? So he has empowering the water, describing the order, and
So he has the 3 verses.
He has the 3 verses. So empowering the water, describing the order, and then letting us know this is going to be happening. So he has those 3 elements, but how does he double it for the him? That's going to become the question tomorrow. He has to retain only 3 verses, but find some other way to double it, or some other way to tell us that all these 3 elements apply to him too. So that, God willing, coming tomorrow. Have a wonderful day, Eden.
All the very best to you, Rabbi. Yeshua. You should have a blessed day, all of you. Take care, Yeshua. All the very best to all. Thank you.